If you were to ask Mary White Scott when she met her husband, Governor William Kerr Scott, she might have told you that she couldn't really say. The truth was that she had known him all her life. Mary and Kerr were born 1 year apart in rural Alamance County, North Carolina. Kerr in 1896 and Mary in 1897. Their families had been neighbors for generations and were both known locally as successful farmers and businessmen. Mary and Kerr grew up attending the same school and were members of Hoffield's Presbyterian Church. Their paths diverged, however, when Kerr graduated from high school in 1913 and went off to what is now North Carolina State University to study agriculture. During the years that Kerr was away at college, Mary started her own career as a teacher. After working for a while to earn her tuition, she enrolled at what is now the University of North Carolina in Greensboro, then a women's college. Mary was a teacher at a number of schools, including Ramseur Elementary School in Randolph County, Woodlawn School in Alamance County, pictured here, Anderson School in Caswell County, and Taylorsville School in Alexander County. It was at Taylorsville in the spring of 1919 that Kerr and Mary met again. The war had ended, and he had been discharged from the Army. Kerr surprised Mary while she was at school teaching her class. Here is her recollection of this event.
Kerr had been in service, and I knew he was coming home, but had no idea he'd come to see me first. But when I answered a knock on my room door that day and opened it, there he stood, so nice looking. I guess I was excited, for I don't recall much that went on the rest of the day except that my students didn't learn much, and neither did I.
Mary and Kerr were married at their home church, Hoffield's Presbyterian, a few months later on the 2nd of July. The church was decorated with wildflowers arranged by Kerr's younger sister, Elizabeth. Years later, when asked about that day, Mary recalled that it had been one of the hottest days she could remember. During the ceremony, she was worried that the beautiful wildflowers might conceal chiggers. After a brief honeymoon at the coast, the new couple started their lives on 224 acres of land located on Back Creek, a property formerly owned by an ancestor, Charlie Kerr. Kerr arranged for a Civil War-era log cabin to be moved to the property, and with the help of his family and neighbors, expanded it into the cottage where they would live for the rest of their lives. Like many women of her generation, Mary was expected to get an education, but it was always assumed that she would marry and have children. Women of her generation were expected to stop working outside the home as soon as the children came along. Mary and Kerr would have 3 children, Osborne in 1920, Mary Kerr in 1921, and Robert in 1929. Within a year of their marriage, Kerr was hired to be the farm agent for Alamance County. This was the first of many jobs that would take him away from the farm, leaving Mary and the farm manager, Cecil Johnson, to manage the day-to-day operations. Of course, in her own way, Mary was as busy as her husband. Unlike Kerr, she was a very private person, preferring the quiet of her home, family, and community. And yet she was also known for her graciousness and confidence in public settings. Mary and Kerr were active at their church, where Kerr was an elder, and Mary was a member of the synodical board, chair of her church circle, and president of the church auxiliary. Kerr and Mary were both active in the Grange, a national organization that supported farmers and agriculture. Kerr and Mary attended 3 national conventions, and Mary was a voting delegate each time. Also, Mary had a role on the legislative committee of the Alexander Wilson Grange. Always an advocate for higher education, Mary was a member of the trustees for Flora MacDonald College. In his book, The Political Career of Kerr Scott, the historian Julian Pleasance observed that Mary was an equal partner throughout her husband's career and was known to be her husband's confidant and advisor. Her sense of purpose was as strong as his. In 1936, Kerr decided that his work with the farmers of Alamance County had prepared him for a role his father had sought but never attained, that of Commissioner of Agriculture. The campaign was successful, and for the next 11 years, Carr drove back and forth between the farm in Haw River and his office in Raleigh every weekday. In 1948, in a move that surprised almost everyone, Carr resigned as Commissioner of Agriculture. The reason? He had decided to run for governor of North Carolina. In a remarkable political upset, he won a place on the ballot and in November of 1948 emerged the victor. After the inauguration, Mary's life changed dramatically. Almost immediately, she was asked to oversee a significant renovation and redecoration project at the governor's mansion. Mary's many contributions to North Carolina did not go unrecognized, and she was the recipient of a number of awards during her time as First Lady. Mary's attitude towards her duties as First Lady was typical of her. She wrote to her sister Agnes that she hoped the painting of the hall would be done soon, as she was expecting 2,000 schoolteachers for tea the next day. Mary's sisters often helped her with large social events. By the end of her time as First Lady, she had welcomed more than 225,000 visitors to the mansion. Mary was able to catch her breath in 1953 when Carr's term as governor ended and they moved back to the farm. However, their return to private life would only last for a few months. Very soon, Carr began laying the groundwork for a run for a seat in the United States Senate. In November of 1954, Sam Ervin and Kerr Scott were elected to the United States Senate. They were both sworn in on November 29th. The Scotts found a small apartment in the Carroll Arms Hotel right across from the Capitol. While Carr worked long hours in his office, Mary found many things to do. She visited the Senate gallery often to learn about current events and got involved in a number of activities with other senators' wives. On Sundays, the Scotts walked to church. Mary brought her sewing machine to Washington and made herself some dresses to wear to the many events to which she was invited. In the spring of 1955, Mary was invited by First Lady Mamie Eisenhower to a lunch for the senators' wives, leaving us to wonder if she wore one of her own creations. Mary and Carr returned to the farm as often as they could on breaks. Frugal Mary would pack a lunch, which they ate on the road. When Carr decided he would run for re-election in another 2 years, the Scotts moved to a larger apartment in the Westchester apartment complex a few miles away from Carr's office. Sadly, on a trip home for Easter in the spring of 1958, Carr became ill and was hospitalized for a heart attack. He seemed to be recovering when he suffered a second, this time fatal heart attack. Senator Sam Ervin announced Carr's passing to his colleagues in the Senate. He also led a funeral procession from Washington. A second funeral procession was led from Raleigh by Governor Luther Hodges. Thousands lined up at Hawfield's Presbyterian Church to pay their last respects to the man who had spent his life helping his fellow citizens. Mary returned to the farm, but the next few years were anything but peaceful. She and her brother-in-law, Anderson Hughes Scott, spent the next 2 years settling Carr's estate. In all of this, as in all things, Mary kept a level head and a gracious manner. She tended her garden, cultivated her flowers, and watched her grandchildren grow up. A number of honors came to Mary in later life. In 1961, at age 63, she was appointed by Governor Terry Sanford to the State Board of Health, becoming the third woman to serve on that board. In 1966, she received the Distinguished Service Award of the National Arthritis and Rheumatism Foundation. And in 1970, 2 years before her death, Mary and her family traveled to the campus of Western North Carolina University for a formal ceremony in which a new dormitory was named for her. Her son, Governor Robert W. Scott, spoke, as did many others, praising her gracious service to the state of North Carolina. In her later years, Mary developed a heart condition that made her susceptible to pneumonia. In the spring of 1972, she fell ill and was taken to Duke Hospital, where she died April 23rd, the Sunday before her 75th birthday, and during the 3rd year of her son's term as governor. Mary was laid to rest beside her husband in the cemetery at Hawfields Presbyterian Church. Her headstone included a verse from the 23rd Psalm. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. What can we say about Mary's amazing journey? People who knew Mary often said that she and Carr complemented each other. He was comfortable in public, a visionary who enjoyed a crowd. Mary, on the other hand, was said to be soft-spoken and quiet, loving nothing more than working in her garden. But on some fundamental level, they were very much the same. They came from the same farming roots, they shared the same faith and love of family, and they both believed in the future of North Carolina.